Hi everyone, my name is Mako and I'm the Gallic Witch. Today I want to make a little bit of a special video because I want to have on my channel a video that I can point people to as a central place of information on my disability and the story of how I became disabled, all of that, answering some questions and things like that in the comments. So this is going to be just about that. There's not going to be anything about what my content is usually about. So without further ado, here is my story. Growing up as a child, I was repeatedly told that I was very clumsy, that I kept getting injured, that I kept falling. Even before I had any memories, my mom told me that as a baby I would constantly get hurt pretty bad for a baby, from like tiny falls that any other baby probably wouldn't even have gotten a bruise from, and I would either get a bruise or I would break skin, I would bleed very easily, and any injury that I got would heal horribly. It would be very long, it would left pretty ugly marks, and that's a constant. I mean, I'm covered in scars, top to bottom. So that was like a constant throughout my life. You're so clumsy, always falling. Oh, you should be more careful. Why can't you be more careful? Don't run around. Which was kind of hard and kind of an awful thing because we lived on a boat my entire life. I was still living on a boat until like less than 6 months ago. And because of that, my sister and I, we were very rarely in the same school. If in school at all, we were our only friends to each other, so everything we did was just running around outside of the boat wherever we were stopping for the night or for the week or for the month, wherever. So it was a lot of it. It was a very easy way to get hurt. We were constantly in nature. Rarely we would park the boat in a city or something like that, so I was constantly getting hurt. I have so many memories of violent falls and even not so violent falls causing disproportionate amounts of damage to my body. One day when we were parked with the boat, I think I was maybe 8 or 9, I was on my bike simply going down from like the small slope that came from the bridge down to where the boat was. It was like a dirt road. I was on the bike. The bike slipped on a piece of rock and sent me crashing to the side, and I opened underneath my nose straight, down my lip, my teeth opened the insides of my mouth and underneath my chin, and I still have the scars today. I have a pretty big scar there and a pretty big scar here, just falling from the height of my bike, and I wasn't even like pedaling. I fell almost standing still, and that's the amount of damage that I got from that. One time I fell on an escalator, I think it's called. It's one of the biggest scars on my body. My entire knee is like ripped just because I fell on like the pointy step of an escalator. My surgery scars are massive, even though the surgery was relatively minor. I fell from, in those children's parks in like towns and cities. There was those like animals or boats or stuff that have a what's it called? I'll put the English word, a ressort, and I was on that. It was maybe like half my height. I think I was 11. It was pretty, it was as high as I would have been if I had been crouched. That's how high it was. And I was sitting on the thing and I fell backward, and I put my arm behind me to like catch myself. I fell not even from my height, and I broke all the bones in my arm. The 2 bones that are there, they were broken diagonally, and there's a small bone in your wrist that's like this, that helps your wrist kind of rotate, and on the scan they could see that the bone was like this. So I had a cast for over 2 months. There was talks of surgery. They didn't want to do surgery because I was so young, so they had to leave the cast an overly long amount of time because apparently I wasn't healing. What a surprise. Like that was just the story of my life as a kid. Before the age of 13, when everything changed to the doom, I had broken my left wrist, both my right and left ankle. I had a number of very bad scars from very bad cuts I had gotten, cuts that would go to the bone, that would bleed a lot. I had dislocated my knee, my shoulder. It was pretty bad. It was well known in my family that if someone was going to get hurt, it would be Mako. And if Mako was to get hurt, it would be very bad. So I was supposed to be very careful to don't run, don't jump, try to walk straight, because I would always run into people when we would walk side by side. I would walk into lamp posts in the street, I would walk into doors constantly, and my parents told me after like a visit and stuff, it was like kind of established that the reason that was happening to me is because I had bad eyesight and I couldn't appreciate distances. So when I saw the lamppost was here, it was actually here, and I would run into it constantly. So that was like the running theory, even though I was wearing glasses that were fit to my eyesight. Still, apparently even with glasses I couldn't appreciate distances. That was the consensus. That was my life for the first 13 years. And when I was 13, I went on our usual summer vacation to my grandparents in completely different part of France. I was alone with my sister. There wasn't either of my parents, and I was with my cousins on a trampoline, and as I was jumping, I jumped one time, and when I came down, I didn't slip because it wasn't slippery. My ankle barely touched the surface of the trampoline, and it like collapsed under me in a way that was, at the time, that felt completely inexplicable. It just refused to hold, like the other one did when I fell down, normally as you would on a trampoline. As I went back down after the jump, one of my ankles was straight, normal, and the other one just slipped. It wasn't a slip, but just like it collapsed under me. And it was the worst pain I had ever felt. Even worse than like opening my knee from left to right, worse than opening my face, just the worst pain I had ever felt. And so my cousin ran to get my aunt and my grandma, and we got into the car, and we were like in the middle of nowhere where my grandparents lived. So we had to drive like 45 minutes to the nearest hospital. And when we got to the hospital, it was like one of those, it was one of those countryside hospitals. It was pretty small and there was no one there, which was very lucky. So we got there immediately. They did a radio of my ankle and found no break in the bones. So they were like, cool, it's probably just a sprain. So here's a ankle stuff to set your sprain. Here's some paracetamol, and just go home, wait, keep the thing for 2 weeks, walk with crutches for 2 weeks, and when the 2 weeks will be over, your sprain will have healed and you'll be able to go back to normal. Cool. We went back from the hospital. I had to sleep on the couch because my bedroom was like at the second floor of the house. And in the morning, my entire ankle, from like almost the shin to like the middle half of my foot, was purple, like dark black purple. And it was extremely painful. It had swollen so bad that the cast sprain they had given me for the sprain couldn't fit around my ankle. So I couldn't wear it for the first, if I remember correctly, the first 5 days after the accident, I couldn't even put the sprain on. I had to take it off during the night, the first night, because the ankle had gotten so swollen that the sprain was pushing against the cast, and it was so painful, so I had to take it off. And I couldn't put it on for 5 days. So I went back, I finished my vacation in the couch. I went back down to the south of France where we were living at the time with my crutches and stuff. And so I did like the doctors ordered. I didn't set my foot down for 2 weeks. I always used the crutches, never took off the cast, and that was it. The 2 weeks passed. I stopped everything like they had told me, even though my ankle still had some pretty bad black bruising all around. It wasn't as bad as like the first few days, but it was like this big on either side of my ankle, like ping pong ball big, and it hurt pretty bad still. But we listened to the doctors, and there was kind of an attitude like from my parents and my family. There was kind of like an understanding that that's just what happens. They always get hurt. No biggies, no worries. So I began walking again on my ankle that was still hurting me very bad and still bruised. I walked on it for 6 months, and it never stopped hurting. And I would tell my parents, "Hey, it hurts," and I would say, "You only want attention. Stop complaining. Like it's healed. There's no reason to complain. Stop complaining. You only want attention." So okay, sure. About 6 months later, maybe 7 months, my middle school were taking us, like my Greek and Latin class in middle school was taking us on a trip to see some ruins in Lyon. So we went there, and Lyon is built, like it's one of the biggest cities in France, and the whole of it is built on a pretty big hill. So it's you have to climb all the time. And there's like a transport to get you up there, but we were 13-year-old kids, so the teachers wanted us to like walk, because they're 13-year-olds, they can walk, so there's no reason they shouldn't explore the city, even if like there's a lot of a slope. So that's what we did. The trip lasted, I think, 4 or 5 days, and at the end of it I was in so much pain. I went to my teacher, and like she had seen me struggle the whole trip, and I complained a bit, but not too much, because I was told that there's no reason to complain, I'm just after attention, apparently. So she had seen me struggle, and I went to her, and I said, I can't put my foot down for another step. It's not possible. I'm gonna collapse. I'm in so much pain. And she looked at my ankle, and it was burning, like it was so hot to the touch. And there was some very faint bruising where there had been like the big bruise at the start of the injury. And she said, "Yeah, it doesn't look that great. Maybe you had like a minor sprain." So she went to the pharmacy, because we were on a trip without our parents, so we couldn't go to the doctor without permission. So she went to the pharmacy, she got me some paracetamol, and she told me that for the evening I wouldn't go to do like the activity with the rest of the class, and I would just stay in the hotel and rest my foot. So that's what we did. And when we came back from the trip, she talked to my parents, and she told them that my ankle was pretty bad and maybe we should go see someone. And suddenly, because an adult had said something, my parents took me seriously. So we went to see they alone went to see our GP, and she told us to go see a sport doctor. So, because not only was I a semi-professional athlete at the time, like going to become a professional, but they are specialized in these kinds of injuries. So we took an appointment, and we went to see the sport doctor, and the sports doctor took like one look at my ankle, and he said, "There's something that hasn't healed correctly, so we're going to do a scan, a radio, an ultrasound, and an MRI, and we will see if there's something there." So that's what we did, and the results came back, and I had torn 3 ligaments in my ankle completely, like they were severed. completely severed. And the massive bruising that I had at the beginning of the injury was the blood from the ligaments getting torn apart. And the pain I had been experiencing was because I was literally every day walking on 3 torn ligaments, and on top of that, because I was working on it and nothing had been done to fix it, the ligaments had been trying for like 6 months to join the 2 torn halves to repair themselves as best as they could, but because I was moving my foot so much, the 2 ends couldn't find each other, so I had massive buildup of tissue that had regenerated and then necrosed, died off and then separated inside of my foot, and all of that build-up tissue had gotten stuck inside of the joint of my ankle, which on top of that meant that was the reason for 6 months I could less and less point my ankle or completely flex it back. And he said this is very bad, this could cause lifelong injuries and problems, we need to operate. So that was a pretty hard news to get, because even if I knew that something was wrong, I didn't know it was that bad and that I had been effectively making it worse every single day by working on it. And my parents didn't really want to accept that they had kind of messed up by not taking care of it earlier. So they didn't really want to, they weren't all in on the surgery. But eventually they were convinced and we scheduled my surgery for the next November. So we were in April, May. So I had my surgery on November 2011. So I went in to have surgery. I was anesthetized from the waist down. They did a surgery where they put 2 metal rods on either side of your ankle and they scrape at the build-up tissue inside of your joint to free it up, and maybe they did some light restorative work on my ligaments, but I'm pretty sure they didn't, or at least I wasn't told that they did any, so they left them separated. It was just a surgery to clean up the buildup. It didn't actually address the initial injury. So I came out of the surgery, we were with my mother, and I couldn't feel my toes. And the surgeon said that it's normal, you're still asleep from the waist down, so that's normal, it's gonna come back. We had a checkup appointment 3 months later and I still couldn't feel my toes, move them, or even like the front half of my foot. From like the arch to the toes, all of that was completely asleep. I couldn't use it, I couldn't move it, I couldn't feel it. You could step on my foot and I wouldn't feel it. And he said there's still some anesthetic left inside of your foot. That's why you can't feel it, but it's gonna get better, don't worry. Which sounded a bit weird to my mom and I, because we didn't think that anesthetic could last for 3 months, but he was the surgeon and he knew better, so we trusted him, which we will come back to very soon. So I was ordered to do some physical therapy to get back some mobility and some strength inside in my ankle, which is what I did. I went to see a physical therapist in the big city next to where we were, and I did, I think, maybe 2 sessions, and I was in pain. So I told the therapist, I said, can we do some other exercise that don't hurt as bad? And he said it's not supposed to hurt at all, maybe like some light discomfort, but you shouldn't be in pain. So he showed me a pain scale with like some description beside the numbers, and he said, where are you on the scale? And I said 6 or 7, and he said, okay, that's not normal, we will stop immediately, you shouldn't be in pain at all, maybe a 1, maybe a 2, not 6 or 7. And he said there's a problem, clearly. And he said that he thought he knew what the problem was, and on top of that we were doing some exercises to get my toes back, or at least that's what we thought. So he would put like a cloth on the ground and I would have to grab the cloth with my toes, and I would stare at my toes for like hours and nothing would move, and I would feel crazy because I'm like, that's my body and I cannot control my own body, which felt insane to me. But that was what was happening. My toes were dead, completely dead, and we thought that's not normal either. It's been like 4 months. That's not anesthetic anymore. There's a problem here. So the physical therapist said, go see your sports doctor who ordered the surgery and tell him what's going on. So that's what we did, and the doctor said, maybe you have an algodystrophy. So we will send you to do a scintigraphy. We will see if that's the case, if the PT is right. And he was indeed right. During the scintigraphy, they stab you with a very large needle and they send a product throughout your whole body that like burns from the inside. It's great. 10 out of 10 would recommend. And it lights up zones in your body that have inflammation or stuff like that. Like it's a contrast product. So that's what they did, and they found a mass of blood and tissue in my foot. I had some internal bleeding that had congealed into like not liquid blood anymore, which we could see because after the surgery I had the same kind of bruising I had when I injured my foot almost a year and a half ago. And my surgery scars would not heal. They took very long to heal. It was a mess, honestly. And so they said, okay, you have a pretty bad case of algodystrophy. And I said, great, what's algodystrophy? And so they explained to me that it's a trauma response to usually an invasive procedure. They told me that most of the time it happens after a surgery, though there were some exceptions, and he said that most of the time, like 90% of the time, it happens to old people who have a surgery. 5 years later, my grandfather would have a surgery on his knee and he would get an algodystrophy and he was like almost 80. But I said it's not very normal that at 14 you have an algodystrophy, especially a pretty bad one. What it does is that it sends pain to your brain. I mean, it's kind of hard to explain because they're still not very sure what causes it, why it happens, or even why it goes away, and there's no treatment for it. It's just a response to trauma that usually messes you up pretty bad, gives you excruciating pain, can cause some physical injuries as well. So I had the algodystrophy for 3.5 years. We would do regular exams to see if it was still there. I could have told them that I was in pain, so I knew, but we were doing the exams anyway. They also told me that I had regular bruising coming back inside of my foot, that the tissue was pretty badly touched, that there was scarring inside of my ankle, and that I was getting tendinitis repeatedly inside of my ankle because of what was happening. I could barely walk at the time. I was in pain all the time. That's about when I started taking medication. I was 14 when I started when I graduated from paracetamol into first anti-inflammatory medicine, and then I got into some pretty heavy stuff that they told me they had issues giving to a child, but I was in so much pain that it was preventing me from having a life. I couldn't go to school, I couldn't do anything anymore. So it was at a point where they said, our goal is to improve your quality of life, even if it means reducing your life expectancy. We prefer that over you not having the bare minimum of quality of life. So I started getting some pretty heavy medication at that time, which I responded terribly to. I took one that stopped me from sleeping and made me heavily dehydrated. I took one that would make me throw up on the clock 20 minutes after taking it systematically. I would take one, I would throw up immediately 20 minutes later. I took one that made me incredibly sick but wouldn't make me throw up. It was very weird. So I had a really hard time finding something that would both work for the pain and not make me incredibly sick, which was hard because it was usually one or the other. So that went on for years, and even with the algodystrophy, they thought that it was weird that I was in that much pain, and they couldn't really figure out why I wasn't healing, why there was always stuff inside of my ankle, why it was always looking bad. My toes never came back. I'm 25 and the front half of my foot is still dead. So thank you, Mr. Surgeon, but it was not anesthetic. You actually messed up pretty bad, which was great news to get from another surgeon like 10 years later. So I was in incredible pain, and it was at a point where everyone was telling us that there was nothing they could do. We went to see so many specialists of the ankle, specialists of injuries, for athletes, specialists in algodystrophy, in recovery from trauma injuries in so much specialists. I went to see osteopath, physical therapists, so many people, and everyone was telling me, we don't know what's wrong with you. Something is obviously wrong, like we can see it on the scans and we believe you, like we can see that you're in a lot of pain, but we don't know what the problem is. We don't know what's happening. We don't know why you are healing so bad. We don't know. So eventually, I think when I was maybe 16, we went to see another specialist, and he said, you should do infiltrations, which is when they take a very long, very thick needle and they inject cortisone inside of the place that hurts in the hopes of reducing the pain. And that person looked at me and like made me do a couple of stuff, and he said that I was hyperlax, which is what he told. And he said that basically I was too flexible, which wasn't normal. But we brushed over it. It was just like something that, oh, you should know that you are overly flexible, and so you are maybe prone to a couple of injuries that come from being overly flexible. I was like, okay, cool. That explained why I was so good at the sport that I was doing at the time. And so we did those infiltrations of cortisone, and it would hurt so much. I cannot explain to you how much it hurt. That I was a 16-year-old and my dad had to carry me back from the doctor's office to the car because I could not walk. I was bawling my eyes out. I was in so much pain, and the doctor was like, it's okay, it's gonna pass, you're okay. I'm sorry it's hurting you, but you'll see it will make you feel better. And every time, not only would it not do anything for my pain, but I would come out of that doctor's office like I fainted a couple of times from the pain, and I got a pretty good pain resistance from all of this stuff that happened to me. So that was like, it was excruciating. So we eventually stopped that because it obviously wasn't working. And by the time I was 18, it was my first year, no, 17, it was my first year of university. And we didn't know what was happening to me anymore. And I was very discouraged. And because I was at university, it was the first time that my parents weren't taking care of my health. So I was doing it, and I kind of gave up. I was like, obviously no one can do anything for me. So I kept looking for like another year, and when I was 18, I said, I give up. My dad was pretty angry at that. He was like, you can't give up. It's stupid, you should keep looking. I was like, Dad, people keep telling us that there's nothing they can do for me. Like, why do you think that someone else is gonna say, oh, I have like the miracle cure? And even if they say that, that's pretty suspicious if everyone else is telling us that there's nothing they can do. So I kind of, like, I would occasionally go see a couple of people, but I kind of gave up, even though I was in pain all the time. I had to go to my university's doctor, so I had a paper that said that I had health issues and that might prevent me from going to class occasionally, or that I would have to go to the doctor pretty often. And eventually I went to see a specialist, an ankle surgeon, a specialist of ankle surgery, and he looked at all of my exams from almost the past 10 years, the past 8 years, and he said, I can't tell you what's wrong with you, but I can tell you that the surgery that was done to you, we don't do anymore, because we did it to about 2,000 people, and the rate of failure was over 90%. Over 90% of people we operated on and did that surgery on had massive complication after the surgery, so we do not do it anymore. And he told me right in my eyes, I was holding back tears when he was telling me this, and he said, I apologize on behalf of the surgeon that did this to you, because I apologized to the people I did it to, because we should not have done that to you, and we should not have done that at all. It was a new surgery that we had just discovered, and we thought it would help people, so we did it to as many people as we could, even people who might not have benefited from it or weren't exactly the type of people who should get that surgery. We did it anyway, and we had a failure rate of over 90%, and I am sorry. That's what he told me. And he said, I can't do anything for you. I don't know what's wrong with you, but I'm sorry for the pain that you got just from the surgery. And he was also the one who explained to me what happened to my toes, and he said that sometimes during that surgery, which that happened apparently to a bunch of other people, because of the metal rods that they put inside of your joint, whichever joint you get this on, they will sometimes cut nerves as the rods go down. They will go through nerves, or the scalpel, to make room for the rods, will cut through nerves. And if the nerves are important enough or big enough, then you lose the function of whatever nerves were connected to. And he said some nerves grow back, but they take over 2 years to grow back. So maybe you'll get, and I told them, hey, my guy, I was operated in 2011 and it's 2018. The 2 years have long passed. And so he said, then I'm sorry, but he cut some important nerves and they didn't get fixed. And so your toes aren't connected to your brain anymore. So that's why you can't feel them, and that's why you can't move them. It sounds minor, like when you say my toes don't work anymore, it's like, okay, that it's not great, but they're toes, like how important can it be? Well, I can't climb or go downstairs properly anymore because I can't feel the front of my foot, so I have to put my whole foot on the stair, so it takes me ages to climb stairs without falling down. I can't drive, also because of like the pain in my ankle, but I can't really drive because I can't feel the front of my foot. So when I push on the pedal, I don't know if I'm actually pushing or if my brain is telling something to my toes and they're not understanding it. So like I'm an actual danger on the road because I don't know when I'm pressing the bloody pedals, which is bad. It's pretty bad. I can't wear certain types of shoes that need you to have some weight on your toes because I can't feel it. So that was just another thing on top of everything else that sucked pretty bad. So at that point I was a little bit over 18 and I was to be honest getting very discouraged, and on top of that, at that time in my life I was very, very depressed. And later we kind of decided that it was very much linked to my poor health. Like I had other stuff, like you can go back on my channel and I have like a video about one of the worst things that ever happened to me, so that didn't help for sure. But my health on top of that, like being, I don't know, there's no way I can explain to you what it does to a brain to be in pain every single minute of every single day for the past 10 years of your life, like the most formative years of your life. I was injured before I started puberty. I spent almost my entire life in so much pain, constant pain, never-ending pain, 24/7 pain. There's no words I can use to explain to you what that does to a brain, like what that does to your aspirations and your dreams and your life and your social life and your friends and your relationship to your family. Years later, my sister told me that she didn't recognize me anymore. She said that I wasn't the sister that she had grown up with because my personality had changed so much that she missed her sister. Because at that point, not only was I extremely depressed, I was suicidal. I attempted suicide 2 times during that period of my life, like when I was in university. But I was an angry person. I was angry and I was very resentful to no one in particular, because it's not like I was gonna barge into the surgeon's office or get mad at the hospital people who took me in when I was 13 and told me that it was just a sprain. Like, yeah, there was a bunch of medical mistakes that happened to me. That's like undeniable. But I don't think I was ever actually resentful towards those people. I was just angry at the world in general. And I was very, very depressed. So that didn't help. So I was, like I said, I was 18 or 19 and I had given up on finding something to do for my pain. And at that time I had started to get some horrific back pain, which I went to see a doctor for, because it was getting to the point that it was impacting my sleep. I mean, I was an insomniac already because of the pain, a chronic insomniac. I was even diagnosed, yay. But it was like, it was one thing on top of another thing on top of another thing. So I went to see a doctor. and he told me that because of the way I was walking, because almost from day one after my injury, I began to, I don't know what the English word is, so because I was walking wrong, I had messed my back pretty bad, and so three of the vertebrae on the bottom of my spine, the discs were crushed, and so that was why I was in pain. I said, okay, cool, great, that's one more thing, amazing. And at that point I met a very nice GP who had just moved into where I was going to university. And she was very young, I don't think she was even 35. And she was the one who found the medication that was working for me, and it was unbelievable to have some pain relief for the first time. Like, the pain never went away completely, but it went to sometimes like an 8 every day to a 4 or a 5, which was amazing for me. Even though it was still a constant present, the pain was always there. It was so much more bearable as like a constant reminder rather than a constant disability. I don't know how to say it otherwise. And she was also the one who helped me do all the paperwork so I would be officially recognized by the government as disabled. When I was 19 or 20, I was recognized officially by the government as disabled. Not only that, but as a disabled worker, which is another category. Even though I wasn't working at the time, I was still a student, but I got the recognition anyway, which was great because it gave me access to like the parking spots and stuff like that. But also at my university I had an actual recognition of disability, so that helped a lot for my classes. Like, I was allowed to get a chair that I would put in front of my desk so I could put my leg on top of it so my ankle wouldn't be down all the time because it would hurt me more. I was allowed to leave class if I needed to just get some air. I would fall asleep in class all the time because of the medication I was on, because before I got used to it, it would like knock me out constantly, so I would like sleep in class for sometimes half the class, and the teachers wouldn't wake me up, which was very nice of them because they knew that it wasn't my fault. So that was like a big turning point for me, to have that doctor who was not only understanding but wanted to find solutions for me, finds ways to help me. That feeling heard for the first time in a very long time was pretty great, because at that time my family was kind of getting bored and not being very charitable to them. But it was like, yeah, we know you're in pain. We're sorry, like genuinely, but there's nothing we can do about it. And when we hear you say that you're in pain, we feel like there's nothing we can do, so we feel guilty. So please stop saying that you're in pain. So I stopped. Which, looking back, I'm not very happy I did, because it contributed to my family not taking me very seriously in my pain. So maybe if I had been more annoying, maybe they would take me more seriously. But I can't change the past. So for the remainder of my time in university, I had no solution for my pain, but now I was seeing this doctor who was trying to help me, and she sent me to a couple more specialists who tried some experimental treatments on me, which didn't work. Actually, kind of a funny story, I went to get a treatment where they put large sort of compresses on sort of, I don't know how to call that. They're like squares of, it's not cloth, it's made of gauze, I think, and it has soaked up capsaicin, which I don't know if you know is the molecule that makes hot peppers hot. So like on I think it's called not the Kelvin, I don't know, like the scale of how hot a hot pepper is, that's based on the concentration of capsaicin inside of a hot pepper. And inside of those gauze that they would put on you, there was 4 grams of capsaicin by square, I can't remember, it was like square centimeters, but they told me that it was like exponentially more concentrated than like a repair hot pepper. And so I went in, like I had to go to the hospital. They put me and 3 other persons who were going through that experimental treatment in a room, and we were like on hospital beds with little, like there were small curtains, but we could see each other because we were facing each other. And they came into the room with like big markers, and they drew on our different body parts. I think it was 2 of us, it was the foot, and then one was the shoulder and one was the knee, I'm pretty sure. They they drew where they were going to put the gauze. So on my foot, they put it on the left and the right, and a bit a little on top of it to try to like wrap my ankle. And so they put that gauze on you, and then they leave you in the room for an hour, I think. I'm pretty sure. And God, it burned. It burned so bad. It felt like I was getting sunburned on purpose, like repeated sunburn on a small area, like someone was concentrating a UV ray just to like get me sunburn after sunburn for an entire hour. It was so bad. And when they came back, like, I'm laughing now, but I was crying because it was so bad. And when they came back, they was like, okay, so like we told you, like, because they told us maybe it was gonna like be a bit uncomfortable. When I came back, I was like, okay, we hope it wasn't too uncomfortable. And they were looking at me like I was red, like from top to bottom, and like I wasn't crying anymore, but it was obvious that I had been crying. And like the three other people, they like we were talking, and I was like, are you really in that much pain? Because they was like, yeah, okay, it's not great, but we're fine. I was like, God, yes, I'm in so much pain. And so they came back in, and I was like, okay, I'm kind of thinking, like they don't have much of a pain tolerance, obviously, if they're being hurt by that. And I was like, at this point, it had been like 10 years of people telling me that I was faking it, or I was doing it for attention, or I clearly wasn't in as much pain as I said I was, even though every time it was proven that I was actually in that much pain, even sometimes more. And so, of course, when they came and they began to remove the gauze, it had like a sticky side that they had stuck on my skin. They started to remove the gauze, and the skin came with the gauze, and the look on the nurse's face, like he went white, like that was pretty impressive because the guy was not white. And so he kind of stopped, and then he turned to the other nurse that was doing the same thing to someone, and he was like, come here now, I don't know what to do. And so he was like holding the little bits of gauze that he had peeled off. He was like, what do I do? What the fuck do I do? And they was like, we have to take it off because obviously it's doing damage, so we can't leave it. And so they had to remove both of the gauze. Thankfully it didn't take off, like, because each gauze was like to my face, it was like this big, and there was two of them. Thankfully the skin didn't come off, like 2 pieces of skin this big, but maybe half of this for each gauze in little pieces, half of it was skin. And so it was, the top layer of my skin had been removed, so it was all like flesh underneath, like just raw exposed flesh. And so they put some cream and they bandaged my foot, and they told me to go home. And the next time I went to see, so that was ordered by a pain doctor, like a specialist, a pain doctor. And so the next time I went to see him, he said like, how did it go? Did you take, because at the end I was supposed to take a second appointment for, I think 4 or 6 months later. Like, did you take your appointment? When is your appointment? And I don't remember if I laughed in his face, but I'm pretty sure I did. And I was like, no, I am not going back. So I had some pretty major scabbing on my foot for a long time. And so the purpose of that was to burn. Like, even when you explain it, it sounds insane. The purpose of the capsaicin gauze is to burn the top layer of nerves that's like just underneath your skin, to kill your nerves so that your pain stops. Because if there's no nerves, there's no pain. Like, doesn't that sound insane when you say it like that? Because at that time we thought that maybe some of my pain was neuropathic, which I don't know if that's the same word in English, just neuropathic in French, neuropathic. Which is like when your neuro, which is like the nerves, is when the nerves are causing the pain. Like, there's no injury, but your nerves are fucked up, and so the nerves are making you suffer. So the theory was that if you burn the nerves, you burn the pain. And apparently it works for like a bunch of people, which great for them, I'm happy it works, but it didn't work for me. It caused a lot more pain. And on top of that, when the scabbing was like, if of course, like usual, it took ages to heal, like so much more time than this. Like it took a long time because it was pretty gnarly, but it took even longer than it should have. And when the new skin was there, the nerves had been burned off, so I could feel even less of my foot than I already could with my like front half of the foot that's dead. Like I could feel even less. It was that was a pretty big failure, honestly. So that kind of like disgusted me from like searching for more for like the remainder of my time at university, because that happened when I was like, I think in my second to last year in university. So I finished university in 2019. I went back home to my parents, and for complicated reason I couldn't go to the school I wanted to go to after university. So I was supposed to find a job the next year, except the year after was 2020, so I didn't find a job. So for a year I stayed with my parents. And like there was no progress on anything. Just I had all my disability stuff, which a lot of employers refused my applications during the pandemic because I was disabled, which they're not supposed to be allowed to do because there's laws against that, but they would be very careful to imply that that was why, without ever actually writing it down anywhere, so I couldn't like complain to higher authorities. So that was great. And then in 2021 was the second big time that my life changed after 2010. I was 2010. So 11 years after my injury, I went to see another pain doctor who wasn't the same as the one who ordered the capsaicin gauze. But I went to see another pain doctor, a specialist in like the pain unit of one of the largest hospitals in my country. He's like super knowledgeable, and he was in his last year. Like he retired just the year after, like in 2022. And so I went to see him, and I will never forget this. I walked inside the room. I had my mask. I was pretty covered up because it was January, so it was pretty cold. I walked into the room, I sat down, and he said, "Why are you here?" And I said, "I came because I'm in pain and we don't know what the problem is." And he said, "No need, I know what you have. I know what your problem is." And I was so skeptical because I was like, sure, after 11 years you know what's going on, but sure, impress me, tell me what's going on. And he said, "You have Ehlers-Danlos Syndrome." I was like, "I'm sorry, what? I have what?" And then in the back of my mind, the name kind of rang a bell, and I was like, I've heard that word before. I've heard this before. And then I remembered that I went to the pharmacy like 6 months prior to get my monthly prescription of my pain medicine, and I was talking to the pharmacist, who was like this blue-haired, like 22-year-old or something, who looked super cool. And I was telling her that like she was, as many pharmacists who don't know me ask, like, why are you taking that kind of like hardcore pain med at, I was 23 at the time. When you're 23, and apparently according to our records you've been taking it for like years, so why are you taking that kind of pain med? So I was like kind of just briefly explaining, just surface level, not like I'm doing here. And I remember she said, "It sounds like you have Ehlers-Danlos Syndrome," which in French is said Syndrome Ehlers-Danlos. And if you don't speak French, that you're not going to catch what induced the mistake in me, because Ehlers-Danlos in French kind of sounds like that you have air, like A-I-R, the thing you breathe. Sorry, I can't pronounce that word, air. It sounds like you have air in your bones. Air dans l'os, that you have air in your bones. And so I thought that what she meant is that I have something that in French we call la maladie des os de verre, which I think in English is called Vrolik syndrome. I'm not sure. It's the thing where like your bones are super fragile, like you have like hollow bones, and so you break your bones all the time. So when she said that I had air in my bones, I thought she meant that I had like hollow bones. And I told her, I broke a couple of stuff, and she said, "Oh, maybe that's not what you have, but I have a friend who has this disease. Maybe you can contact them and see if like you can talk." And so I took like, I think she gave me like a Twitter handle or something like that. So I took the piece of paper and then I never contacted that person because I was like, I don't have I don't have hollow bones disease. I know. So that can't be it. Because I knew, like when I was in middle school, one of my friends had that illness. He was in a wheelchair. So it's like, I know I don't have that. So I never contacted that girl's friend. And when the doctor said that, I was reminded of that conversation. I was like, oh, she didn't mean hair in the bones. She meant Ehlers-Danlos, the two guys who like found out the disease. And I was like, fuck. Maybe I could have known like 6 months earlier. But, you know, that's what happened. And then at the same time, I was like, but I know I've heard it before, but said differently. And I remembered that I've been following for, I think maybe from when she started, like before she got married. I think I've been following her since she got started on YouTube. I'm pretty sure. There's a YouTuber who's called Jessica Calgren-Fozard, and she's an LGBT YouTuber and disability advocate and disability YouTuber, and she has, among other thing, Ehlers-Danlos Syndrome. And I had been watching her for years, and so I had heard her say that word so many times, but because my doctor and I are French, he said the French name, even though it sounds kind of the same, but it didn't click immediately. And I was like, okay, I kind of know that disease. The pharmacist told me about it, and I've heard Jessica kind of describe what it is, but I didn't know the details. And so my doctor explained to me what Ehlers-Danlos Syndrome is, that it's a connective tissue disorder that your body produces collagen, which is what makes the elasticity in your skin, which is why when you get older, your skin wrinkles and kind of like flops down. It's because you don't have enough collagen. So that's why sometimes in anti-aging creams, there's like collagen, it's not really collagen, but collagen creams. So the collagen in my body and people who have Ehlers-Danlos Syndrome, or at least the type of Ehlers-Danlos Syndrome that I have, EDS for short, the collagen that we produce is of such poor quality that it doesn't do its job. And so our skin is extremely fragile, we get hurt all the time, we heal extremely poorly, we get big scars, we get sprains repeatedly, tendons and ligaments are very fragile, we have very poor balance, we tend to be clumsy, we have poor depth perception, we have issues like stomach bowels issues, which I've had all my life. You get some pretty bad bleeding problems. My nose was bleeding my entire life. Like, it was so bad. Everyone knew. Like, with my sister, we used to prank people. Like, I would make myself bleed because it was so easy. I would just like have to do something like that, and it would be like pouring blood. So I would drip blood all over my arms with my sister, and we'd be, I was run over by a bull. We would play like we would take out glasses and I'm not gonna describe, I'm sorry, this is gross. We were gross kids. Anyways, I used to bleed a lot when I was a kid. Even now, my nose still bleeds quite often. So he kept like listing symptoms. I was like, what the fuck? Why did no one tell me about this before? This is everything that I have, like, for years. And he was like, you're often hyperlax. That's what the guy when I was 15, the doctor when I was 15 told me, which is that you're hypermobile. He was like, so can you do, and he pointed like can you do this? I was like, yes, I can do this. I can do this. Can you touch the ground with your hands? I was like, of course I can do that. If you want, I can show you. I can do the splits without warming up. He was like, sure, show me. So I did the splits in the doctor's office. It was great. I was in jeans. Thankfully, I didn't rip my jeans. So that was like a whole thing of like, he had a whole diagnostic criteria to do. So we did it, and I met all the criteria. He had like a 5-page questionnaire form that I had to fill with like questions, and I answered, and I had like 75 out of 75 for like the diagnostic criteria. So that was the whole thing. And he said, are you comfortable taking off your mask? I was like, sure. So I took off my mask, and he said, yeah, okay, you have, I was like how do you know? And he's like, just looking at you, you have fine skin, you have fine features. And he was like, you're pretty. And I was like, this is weird. He was like I don't know, he was like not 70, because he was retiring, so he was maybe like 65, but he was like, obviously you're pretty, and I like, do you have pictures of your family? So I showed him my mom and my sister, because he told me that it's something that mostly comes from mothers. And so he was like, yeah, even like your sister and your mom are pretty, like you have fine, like he said, you have fine features, which I'm not sure in French, I'm not sure that's a very correct translation of what he said, but it means like that I don't know how to say it. So he was like, so you're pretty, so you can put your mask back on. He looked at my eyes, my hair, my nails, I'm pretty sure. He looked at like how my joints move. He made me strip, and he looked at all the bruises that I have all the time. I'm covered in bruises all the time, because like bruises, that's pretty common. He asked me if I had tattoos. I said yes, I have tattoos. He said, do you have big tattoos? I said yes, I have big tattoos. He said, did they take a long time to heal? Did they heal pretty badly? I said fuck yes. He said yeah, that's pretty normal. He said how did your surgery heal? I said fuck no. So yeah, it was like it was super relieving for like an entire hour to have someone validate every single thing that had ever happened to me and be like, yeah, that's normal for you, that's your normal. Like everything that everyone told you that you're not normal for it, that you're wrong, that you're clumsy, that you're not in as much pain as you say, you keep getting hurt, you heal poorly, you're covered in scars, that's okay. So like he looked at he looked at my breasts and my stomach and my thighs, and he was like, do you have a stretch mark? And I said yeah, in some places. He looked, and I have bad stretch mark. Where I have them, I don't have them everywhere, but where I have them, they look like scars, like someone cut me. And he was like, yeah, that's pretty normal. So, like he showed me pictures of other people who have EDS, even people who are much slimmer than me, and they have a lot of scars and a lot of stretch marks, and like we mark so easily. Like I'm gonna show you. I'm gonna do it, and I'll show you in like a minute to show you. Like I just scratched my arm. We mark very bad. We have. He said, do you have a kind of deep aching pain inside of your body that you can't explain because it's not where you got hurt? And I said yes, all the time. And my mom used to tell me that it's growing pain, like you're growing. But I stopped. Like I had a big push when I was before middle school and the first year of middle school. I was the tallest of my class, taller than all the boys. I was almost 1 meter and 60 centimeters when I was like 11. I was so tall, and then I grew like a couple more centimeters, and then I stopped. And then I'm like average height for France. And so I was like, when I was growing like super fast, I was in so much pain that before going to school, like that was before my accident, before all of that happened, before going to school, my mom had to take bandages, and she would soak them with like some anti-inflammatory, like essential oils and creams and stuff that she would at the pharmacy. She would like soak the bandages, and she would roll them, like, can you see that I mark very easily, and it's been like 40 seconds, and she would roll them around my elbows and my wrists, my knees, to like try to immobilize them and have like the anti-inflammatory stuff soak into my skin, because I was in so much pain all the time from like nothing, like growing pains. And I told him I haven't grown in like over 5 years. I've been at this height for over 5 years at the time, and I still have these growing pains in my elbows, in my knees, in my ankles. He said that's one of the symptoms of EDS. It's like this kind of constant pain, constant aching, because you don't realize it, but you're getting hurt 100 times a day. And you're so used to it that you don't even notice it anymore. But your body keeps getting hurt over and over and over again. And it's getting harder and harder to heal every single time. And so you, basically, he said, you have the body of an old man. You're a grandpa, he told me. You have the body of an old man. And so you're hurting like an old man. And he would be proven right, because I had another scan or an MRI, I can't remember, like 3 months ago, because my back pain is getting worse and worse, and they found that I have arthritis, chronic arthritis on almost my entire spine, and it 8 at the cartilaginous layer that's around each vertebrae. The arthritis 8 at that, and so my spine is rubbing against each other on top of the crushed discs, so that's why I'm in so much pain. I have arthritis in a bunch of places in my body. My fingers, especially my fingers, and my knees are the worst. I dislocate them pretty much every single day. Like, even just last night, I sat on my bed and I dislocated my knee. It's so painful. It happens so many times, and so I don't wear it when I do videos because I don't think it looks very nice, but I'm pretty sure in some of my past videos you can see some of my sprain, some of the stuff that I wear to keep my body still. I have one for each of my elbow, one for each of my wrists, for my thumbs, for my shoulders, for my knees, my ankles, for my fingers, because I keep getting sprained, I keep dislocating my limbs, and all of that is symptoms of EDS. I have chronic migraines since I was just when I started university. It started getting at the point where I couldn't go outside when I had those migraines. It was so bad. So now it's right in front of me. I have an oxygen machine, which I use pretty much every single day when I have migraines. I have some pretty heavy pain medication, and I am still every single day in pain. And it has been this way since I was 13 and I'm 25. So in August, it's gonna be the 12th or 13th, I can't remember, anniversary of my ankle injury. My ankle still hurts every single day. I can't walk. I have disability benefits now because I can't work, not like a normal job at least. I can't stand up for more than a couple of minutes. I can't run. I can't jump. I can't drive. I can't wear, like, I have 2 pairs of shoes that are they're the shoes that we wear at the farm, at my mom's farm. And so they are pretty, like, they're practical, they're for the farm, so they're not very pretty. But they hold they're the only shoes that hold my ankle, and I have some special, how do you call that? What you put inside of a shoe to change the shape of, like, the bottom of your foot, because my foot are flat, and so that injures my back even more. My back is completely fucked up, my ankle is fucked up. Oh, also, I forgot, just after I had the EDS diagnosis, I went to see a neurologist and another ankle surgeon who were both in the same hospital as the pain doctor who diagnosed me with EDS. And the neurologist did one of the most painful exams of my life, where they stab big, long needles. That's a reoccurring issue, I think you've noticed. Where they stab big needles, multiples, from memory 4, inside of my shin and my thigh, like inside the muscle, and then they electrocute you! Yay! They send electricity through the needles to electrocute your muscles, to force them to contract, and your nerves to contract, so it's extremely painful. To give you an idea, the office of the neurologist has soundproofing on the wall. And she told me, like, I was crying. I keep crying at this, but because it's so painful. And she was like, I am so sorry. I know how much it hurts. Like, I am aware. Every single one of my patients cries when I do this. Like, that's why we have the soundproofing. I'm so sorry. It's almost done. I'm so sorry. Great. Amazing. 10 out of 10. Would recommend. I love my life. And so she said that the reason why my ankle still hurts 12 years later is because the largest nerve in the entire body, which runs from the back, the end of your back, of your spine, the sciatic nerve at your spine, through your butt cheek, the side of your hip, your thigh, knee, shin, down to the ankle, and the 2 last toes of the foot, like the 2 smallest toes of the foot. That's like the longest nerve in the body. It goes from the toes to the back, to the spine, and my nerve collapsed. That's what she told me. The nerve had collapsed, and it was now stuck in a feedback loop of pain that was sending signal to my brain to tell my brain, help, SOS, there is an injury here, we need to take care of this injury, it is not healed, we need to do something, help, 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 help. And every single day, every single minute of every day, this nerve is stuck in a feedback loop and is telling my brain that the injury I got a long time ago was never healed. And so I'm walking every day like I was walking when I was 14 in that city with my Greek teacher, walking on torn ligaments with bruising and dried up blood and congealed blood and tissue inside of my joint. I'm walking like I still have that injury and it hasn't been healed. I don't have full movement in my leg anymore. My ankle has very limited movement. My toes never came back. I cannot really use my left arm because I was hired in 2017 and I was a server in a hotel. At the same time I was the cleaner and like maid, and like I did every job inside of the restaurant except for the cooking. And I hurt my wrist, elbow and shoulder on that side because I was using it so much, and so I had to have, we call it un arrêt de maladie in French, which is when you stop working because of an injury. So like you get benefits for stopping the work, like you're not punished for stopping the work early, even with a contract. You like get benefits and stuff. So you need like a special doctor to verify that you actually have like a work injury, which is what I had, and it never came back. Like even right now as I'm talking to you, my elbow is in a lot of pain because it's gonna rain. So the moisture makes everything worse. So that's my story. That's what happened to me over the past 13 years of my life. Currently, there is no cure for Ehlers-Danlos Syndrome, and that's why I wanted to make this video now, is because May is Ehlers-Danlos Syndrome Month of Awareness. We are trying to raise money for research, so that's why I want to make this a fundraiser as much as I am able. You can find in the description resources, information about EDS if you're curious, if you think maybe it's something that you could have. There are 13 types of EDS, some that only affect the bowels, some that affect the heart, some that affects other stuff. Mine is mostly hypermobile. I have a heart condition, but there's a type of EDS that's mostly based on the heart, and it's a lot worse than what I have. It's pretty minor what I have compared to what vascular EDS has. So if you want to learn more about EDS, I would appreciate it if you want to donate to the research, because it is currently an incurable illness. There is nothing they can do for us. All they can do is improve our quality of life, relieve our pain as much as they can, provide us with psychological help and support and medical support as much as they can, but there's nothing they can do for us. It's incurable. I recently learned that I'm probably never gonna have children because of it, because of the risks associated with it. This is a pretty not bad illness. Like it's not gonna kill us directly, but the comorbidities or the consequences of EDS can very much reduce your life expectancy or cause issues that themselves will kill you. So if you feel charitable and you would like to participate, there is also some events that we do for EDS Awareness Month. And if you don't know what to talk about tonight at the dinner table, maybe mention this small YouTuber who has EDS, or just explain what EDS is to your family, because it took me 11 years to be diagnosed with an illness that I have since I was born. Maybe you can help someone find an answer earlier than I did and suffer a little less. So thank you very much for watching, for listening to my story, and I will see you again very soon with some more content that I do normally. Thank you for watching, and I will see you very soon. Bye.